So I'm going to record Daf Yomei. We're starting a new parak, Daf Lamed Vav Amud Beis, and hopefully to do Lamed Vav Amud Beis and Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, and slowly during Chol Hamoed try to catch up. To introduce the ideas of this parak, it's important to have a few introductions. Number one, there is a law called Shehiyah, and there's a law called Chazorah. Shehiyah means to leave a pot on a fire Erev Shabbos. If Shehiyah is prohibited, the reason it would be prohibited is because if you leave it on the fire and there's coals, so Friday night, if there are coals, you might stoke the coals, turn the coals and make it burn faster. So that's the idea of Shehiyah, leaving something on a fire Erev Shabbos. Then there's Chazorah, taking something off a fire and then putting it back on the fire on Shabbos. And there you have two issues. One issue is putting something on a fire on Shabbos looks like bishul. It looks like you're cooking. You're putting something on a fire on Shabbos. And the other issue is that if when you took it off, it cooled off a bit, now you're putting it back on the fire, again there's a fear that you may stoke the coals a bit in order to reheat what may have cooled off when you took it off. So that's again Shehiyah and Chazorah. Shehiyah means leaving something on a fire Erev Shabbos, and the fear is if you leave it on the fire Erev Shabbos, Friday night, if it's not going to be ready for you, you may turn the coals, you may stoke the fire so that it cooks faster. And Chazorah is to put something back on a fire on Shabbos, which has two problems. One is mechzi kebishul, it looks like you're cooking, even if the stuff is cooked. Just putting stuff on a fire on Shabbos looks like you're cooking, that's an issur d'Rabbanan. Or because if it cooled off, you might again come to stir the coals and make it hot. Another introduction is that there's a dispute between Hananya and the Rabbanan. According to Hananya, once food has been cooked, Kemachel ben Dresoi, that there's a robber called ben Dresoi would be able to eat it, so then there's no issur of Shehiyah anymore. It's cooked, what's called Machel ben Dresoi. So according to Rashi, it's once it is cooked a third of its completion. According to the Rambam, it's half of its completion. But according to Hananya, once food has been cooked a third or half of its completion, there's no concern for Shehiyah anymore because you won't stir the coals in order to make it cook faster because it's already edible. According to the Rabbanan, they're more strict and they say that as long as it isn't completely finished, even if it's cooked more than a third or a half or almost 80%, as long as it's not all finished, and as long as if you're going to stir the coals, it's going to harm it, so it's usur to do Shehiyah. So again, according to Hananya, there's a leniency in Shehiyah, and according to the Rabbanan, there's a stringency in Shehiyah. So all I did so far was just define Shehiyah versus Chazorah and introduce the opinions of Hananya and the Rabbanan. So we're going to learn the Mishnah without explaining, and then we'll get into the Gemara. The Mishnah says, the kira, a stove. What's a kira? A kira is a rectangular stove Sheisikua, that you heated it using bekash ubegvava, using straw or stubble. So nice tavshil, you're allowed to put food on it because straw and stubble doesn't make any coals, so it's impossible to stir anything. Begefes uveitzim, if you use the residue of olive pulp or use wood, lo yitain, you're not allowed to put any food on the stove if it's been heated with pulp of olives or wood, until you either rake out the coals, or if the coals are going to remain in there, you put down a layer of ash on it, so that cools it down. So therefore, if you do grifa, which is raking the coals out, or ktima, subduing the coals, by covering them, then there's no fear that you're going to stir the coals anymore. So that's, the Mishnah simply said there's a difference between straw and stubble, where no coals are produced, or olive pulp and wood where coals are produced. Now we're going to have two disputes. Beishamai says chamen avaloi tavshil. Beishamai says what's allowed is hot water but not cooked food. Beisila chamen v'tavshil. Beisila says what's allowed is hot water and food. No explanation. Beishamai says noitlen avaloi machzir. Beishamai says you can take food off on Shabbos but you can't put it back. And Beisila says Beisila af machzir and can even put it back. So now, let me explain what the Gemara is about to do. The Gemara is going to wonder whether our Mishnah is being very lenient, a la Chananya, or is it being strict, a la Rabbanan? Let me explain. Perhaps our Mishnah holds like the Rabbanan, that unless the food is completely cooked and you can't make it any better, you're not allowed to do Shia. So that's what the Mishnah says, that you can't put food on a stove. If you heated it with straw and stubble, then you could, because there's no coals to stoke. But if you used olive pulp or wood, then you're not allowed to put food on it, Me'erev Shabbos, say the Rabbanan, because I'm afraid that the coals that are formed, you may stir them Friday night. So then our Mishnah is the stringent view of the Rabbanan that Shehiyah is prohibited. On the other hand, one might argue that our Mishnah is the lenient view of Hananya, that as far as putting stuff on a stove Erev Shabbos, you can do it. No problem, because once it's cooked a third or a half, there's no fear that you might stir any coals. It's already cooked well enough, according to Hananya. The only issue is to put food back on Shabbos. So there we have a concern that it either might look like you're cooking, or you might stir the coals in order to heat up something which may have cooled down. So therefore, if it's straw and stubble, which it doesn't create any coals, so it doesn't look like you're cooking, it's all gone, and you can't stir anything, there's nothing to stir. But with wood and olive pulp, you're not allowed to put back food on Shabbos, because since there are coals there, it looks like you're cooking, even though the food is completely cooked, or you might come to stir it to heat up previously food that cooled down. So again, trying to keep it short and sweet, it's not clear whether the Mishnah that differentiated between stubble and straw versus olive pulp and wood is the Mishnah with the strict opinion that difference makes a difference in Shehiyah, or Shehiyah is perfectly allowed. As Hananya said, the difference in the Mishnah has to do with Chazorah. So Yiboilu, the Gemara, the Gemara wanted to know, Hi lo yitain, when the Mishnah says lo yitain, is the Mishnah being lenient? Means lo yachzerhu. The qualification between stubble and straw versus olive pulp and wood is regarding putting food back on a Shabbos. Avalisha is mashin. But to leave food on the stove Erev Shabbos, you're allowed to. Avopi she'ena gor ve'ena kotim, even though there are plenty of coals there. Umani and Huru that go according to Hananya, he would go according to Hananya. The Tanya is Wilent and Abraisa. Hananya Omer Kol Shu Kemachal Ben Drusoi, any food that's cooked so that this robber Ben Drusoi would eat it, because the robber was in a rush, so he used to eat rare meat. So anything which is cooked Kemachal Ben Drusoi Mutter Lashois Al Gabakir, you're allowed to leave it on the stove, it's Mutter. Afal Pi She'ena Gor Ve'ena Kotam, even though the coals have not been raked out, nor have you covered it with a layer of ash, it's perfectly okay, because our Mishnah is lenient, and the Mishnah is again qualification between Kash and Gevova and Gefes Ve'etzim is only regarding Chazar and Shabbos, but L'gabi Shia it's Mutter. Or maybe Lasha is Tanan, or maybe our Mishnah is the stricter view of the Rabbanan, that we're talking about leaving the food on the stove Erev Shabbos, and igor v'kotum, if it's made of stubble or straw, or it was made of wood or pulp, at least you raked it out or you covered it, and then it's allowed. But Eloi, if you didn't cover the coals or you didn't rake it out, loy it's aser. And v'kolshken is certainly lahachzer, to put back is for sure aser. So whereas our Mishnah the lenient view of Chananya and only giving you qualifications regarding Chazara, or is the Mishnah the strict view of the Rabbanan that even in Shehiyah you have to be careful that you shouldn't come to stir the coals? So Toshima, the Gemara tries to bring a technical proof from the Mishnah, Midiktani Trebavi Masnisim, because after the Mishnah says differentiate between Kash and Gevava and Gefes Ve'etzim, there are two machlokes. And here's Beishamai Yemer. Beishamai says Chamin Avaloi Tavshel, that you can do hot water but not cooked food. We'll see what that means in a second. And Beis Hillel Yemer Chamin V'Tavshel. Beis Hillel says that you're allowed to put up either hot water or cooked food. And Beishamai Yemer, Beishamai says Noitlen Avaloi Machzir, and you can take food off, which is no chiddush, but you can't put food back on. And Beis Hillel says Av Machzirin, you can even put food back on. Okay, so now we have again a qualification between Kash and Gevava versus Gefes Ve'etzim. We have two disputes between Beishamai and Beis Hillel. One dispute is what to put on. Beishamai says only water, and Beis Hillel says even food. And there's a dispute regarding putting back. Beishamai says you can't put back, and Beis Hillel says you can. So the Gemara makes a simple observation. If you say Bishlamut would be well understood, Lasha is Tanat, that the Mishnah is talking about the strict view of the Rabbanan, that we're talking about when is it allowed or when is it not allowed to leave food on the stove Erev Shabbos. So what the Mishnah means is as follows: Kira shisiku b'kasha b'gvava. If you have a stove that was heated with straw and stubble, mashin ala tavshel, you're allowed to leave food on it Erev Shabbos because that's not a problem. There are no coals to stir. Begefes ve'etzim lo yasha, but if you heated it with pulp from olives or wood, do not leave food on it Erev Shabbos, because the Rabbanan say you're not allowed to leave food if it's not completely cooked. Ashiyigraf, unless you rake out the coals, ayat shit and afer, or you cover the coals with some ash that will damp it down. Imahin mashin, and when we say that you did do grifa and ktima, what are you allowed to leave on Friday? Beishamai is even still stricter. Beishamai yarmim chamen avaloi tavshel, only hot water, not cooked food. What's on Beishamai's mind? Beishamai is very strict. They say that even if you rake out the coals, there always can be a coal or two left, and even if you tamp down with ash, there might be something still there. So hot water, I don't mind if you leave it, because you're not going to stir it in order to make the water hotter, because all you need to do with water is just keep it hot. You don't need it to keep boiling; it'll boil out. So chamen you're allowed to put up, but loy tavshel. Beishamai is machmer. Even if you did grief and ktima, I'm afraid to leave a tavshel on. Beis Hillel says chamen v'tavshel. Beis Hillel says that you can do both. In other words, once you either heated it b'kasha b'gvava with straw and stubble, or you raked out any coals, so you're welcome to leave both chamen and tavshel on the stove. And by the way, kihechi de pligi b'lasha, it's the same way that there's a dispute about leaving food on, pligi nami b'lachzer, there's an additional argument about putting food back. Shebeshamai Yemer, Beshamai says noitlen avalei machzir, and you're not allowed to put anything back because they consider it, it looks like cooking, and you might rake the remainder of a coal or two in order to make something that cool down, heat up. Beis Hillel says you can even put food back on, whether it's water or food, because since you raked it out, so it doesn't look like you're cooking anymore because all the coals are raked out. And I'm not afraid that you might stir it because there's nothing really left to stir. So simply speaking, if the Mishnah is the strict view of the Rabbanan, so in the strict view of the Rabbanan, Shia is prohibited unless there are no coals left, because either you heat it with gasha v'gvava or the gefes ve'etzim you did grief and ktima. So we're machmer, but you have to do grief and ktima. Beishamai says even with grief and ktima, I only allow you hot water but not food, because they're concerned about a coal or two or some residue that you might still stir. And Beishamai says you're not allowed to put anything back on the fire and on Shabbos, even though you raked the coals out and you covered it. Beishamai says you are. Ella, but amrit, if you say lachzer kanan, if the Mishnah is talking about the lenient view of Chananya, that only regarding putting food back do you need to do grief and ktima, but for shehiyah, to leave food on Erev Shabbos, as long as it was cooked more than a third or half, there's no fear of shehiyah because you're not going to stir it. So then, hachik tani, let's read the Mishnah. It's not going to work. Kira shesikua bekasha begvava. If you heated the stove using straw and stubble, machzir and olel tafshel, you're allowed to put food back on Shabbos. And begefes ve'etzim, if you heated it using pulp from olives or wood, lo yachzir, you're not allowed to put food back on Shabbos, at sheyigroif ayat sheyitan efer, unless you raked out the coals earlier before Shabbos, or you put ash down on the coals. But shia is for sure mutter. And what is it that you are allowed to put back, assuming that you did grief and ktima? Beishamai says only chamen, only hot water, because there you're not going, it doesn't really look like you're cooking because the water is hot, and I don't think you'll stir it in order to heat it up. Avaloi ta'afshel, but not food. For food, I'm afraid that you might still stir something that's left after grief and ktima. And Basila says chamen v'tafshel, you're allowed to put back both hot water and a tafshel. You did grief and ktima, so there's nothing to worry about. Now, Beishamai Yarmim Noitlim Lemachzir. Beishamai says you can put on, but you can't take off. Beisila Lemach Machzir. Beisila says you can even put back. But Hosu Lamali, why did the Mishnah have to tell me that last dispute? We were talking already about Chazara. And Beishamai says Chazara, you're only allowed to put back chamen and not a tafshel. And Beisila says you're allowed to put back both. So why would Beishamai and Beisila have to repeat themselves? The Beishamai says loy machzir and you can't put back a tafshel. And Beisila says you can. So the Gemara answers loy ma'emelach. I could actually say to you lahachzir tanan. Maybe the Mishnah is the lenient view of Chananya. And the only requirement to do grief and ktima is only for chazara on Shabbos. And chasuri mechaser v'achitani. The Mishnah is missing a few words and should be read as follows. Kira shisikur bekasha begvava. If you have a stove that was heated with stubble or straw, machzir and olah tafshel, you're allowed to put food back on it because there are no coals. But if it's begefet ve'etzim, or if the stove was heated using olive pulp and wood, lo yachzer at sheyigroif at sheyitan efer, then don't put it back unless you rake out the coals or unless you put down ash on the coals. Avol lashois, but to leave something on Erev Shabbos, mashan, you're allowed to leave Erev Shabbos. This is the piece that's missing in the Mishnah. Avol pi she'ena gar ve'ena katan, because the halacha is like Chananya. We're going to go with that side. That once it's cooked a third or a half, we're not afraid of shema yechata begacholim, you might stir in the coals. Umahin mashin, and what is it that you're allowed to leave according to Chananya? Beishamai says chamen avaloi tafshel, only hot water but not cooked food. And Beisila chamen v'tafshel, you can leave on hot water or cooked food. Now, and by the way, when we said that you're allowed to put food back on the stove as long as it was heated with stubble or straw, or it was heated with pulp or wood, and you cleared it out or you covered it with ash, lav divra koili, not everybody allows that. Elamachloik is Beishamai Beisilul, but it's a dispute between Beishamai and Beisilul. Beishamai are noitlim v'loy machzirin. Beishamai says you can take the food off, but you can't put it back. Beisilul mach machzirin. Beisilul says you can even put it back. So therefore, just to simplify, I said in the outline that there's a dispute between Chananya and the Rabbanan. According to Chananya, you're allowed to leave food on a stove without grief and ktima. It can be an open flame. We're not afraid you'll stir it as long as it was cooked more than a third or more than a half. So the only issues that you might have is only regarding chazorah, putting food back on Shabbos. And there, Beishamai will say it's prohibited, and Beisil says it's allowed. You're allowed to put it back as long as you did grief and ktima. So our Mishnah is only talking about chazara, that if you heated your stove with kasha begavava, you have no problems. If you heated it with gefes ve'etzim, you do have a problem, but you have to clear it out or make sure there's nothing to stir. And then you can even do chazara according to Beisil. But for shehiyah, there was never an issue in the first place. On the other hand, our Mishnah could be talking about Shia, because we all like the Rabbanan. And even Shia is kasha begvava's mutter, because there are no coals. And Shia begefes ve'etzim is aser, unless you do grief and ktima. And the same achlaikis, and Beishamai's mater Shia only chamen, only hot water, and not tafshil. Beisil is mater Shia on both, as long as you do grief and ktima. Beishamai doesn't allow chazor, and Beisil allows chazor. So let's try to prove it. Toshima, I'll try to bring you a proof. The Omer of Chelbai, Omer of Chama Bar Guria Marav, Rav Chelbai said the name of Rav Chama Bar Guria, the name of Rav, Lo Shanu, what we allow, no comment. What we allow is El Al Gaba, what we allow is on top. Avalatoicha Aser, but inside is Aser. I'm hearing the words. Let's try that again. Rav Chama Bar Guria said the name of Rav, what I allowed is only on top, but not inside. Now, if our Mishnah is really talking about putting food back on Shabbos, but to leave food on Erev Shabbos is mutter because we hold like Hananya, so Haina Deshani, then I understand. The difference between inside and on top. Yes, Shia is okay, but Shia is okay on top, but not inside. Inside, you're already playing with Hatmona, covering your pot with the ashes and the coals that are inside the stove. So that's already prohibited. We learned from the previous parak that you're not allowed to insulate, even Erev Shabbos, your food with something that's moisef hevel, with something that adds heat. So again, if the Mishnah is talking about chazorah, but shehiyah is mutter, I understand that Rav differentiated, she is mutter on top of the stove, but not inside the stove, because that would be hatmona. But if you're telling me that our Mishnah allows you to do shehiyah only if you do grief and ktima, so if you did grief and ktima, mali toicha mali al gaba. If our Mishnah allows shehiyah, not like Hananya, our Mishnah holds like the Rabbanan, that shehiyah is only allowed if you raked out the coals or you covered them. So if there's no coals anymore, what's the difference if it's on top or it's inside? The Gemara says, Mi savris Rab Chalba Reshakoi. Do you think Rab Chalba is talking about shehiyah? Asefakoi. He might be talking regarding chazorah. And the Beis Hillel Af Machzirin, Beis Hillel said you're even allowed to do chazor on Shabbos, but Omar Rav Chalbai, Omar Rav Chama Bar Guria Marav, Machzirin, this putting back that Beis Hillel allows is Ella Al Gaba, only on top, because since you did a grief and ktima, it doesn't look like you're cooking because there are no coals left inside and there's nothing to stir. Avul Toicha Aser, but to go take a pot of hot food and put it back inside the oven, inside the stove, that I would aser, because even though there's no coals anymore, it still looks like a bishul. So now, in order to make the next piece easier, I'm going to repeat again what I said at the outset, that there are two ways how to understand our Mishnah. One is the lenient way, and one is the strict way. The lenient way is that Shia is not an issue. As long as it's cooked more than a third or a half, you can be Shaya, you can leave, you can keep your hot food on an open flame. The only dispute in the Mishnah is regarding chazara, and chazara Beis Shammai allows only chamin and not tavshil. Beis Hillel allows both. Okay, and only if you did grief and ktima. So one more time, the lenient view says that she is not an issue. Chazara, for chazara you have to do grief and ktima. You have to make sure there's no coals in order to put it back on Shabbos, so it doesn't look like you're cooking, and so that if it cooled down, you don't heat it up again. And Beis Shammai only allows, if there's grief and ktima, only hot water. Beis Hillel allows even cooked food. That's the lenient view. But then we have the stricter view that says, no, that even shehiyah, you have to have grief and ktima. Beis Shammai says, even when you do grief and ktima, what's allowed for shehiyah is only chamen and not tavshil. When it comes to chazara, Beis Shammai prohibits everything, and Beis Hillel allows both chamen and tavshil, of course, as long as you did grief and ktima. So that's the stricter view. Okay? So we have a lenient view of the Mishnah and a stricter view of the Mishnah. We're going to have a brisa coming up right now, which is going to have the opinion of Reb Meir, who seems to be very strict, and Reb Yehuda, who seems to be moderate. The Gemara is going to try to line up this brisa with our Mishnah. Now, if our Mishnah is going to be a strict view, I'm just giving you an outline. If our Mishnah is going to have the strict view, it's not going to correspond as strictly as Reb Meir would say, but it'll correspond very nicely with the opinion of Reb Yehuda, if our Mishnah has at least the strict view. But if our Mishnah is going to have the lenient view, not only will it not match Reb Meir, who is very strict, it won't even match Reb Yehuda either. Again, our Mishnah had a lenient view that she is mutter, and grief ktima is only for chazara, or it had a strict view that you need grief and ktima even for Shia. So that's a lenient view and a strict view. If our Mishnah is going to be understood as a strict view, it'll work well with Rabbi Yehuda and the Braisa. If our Mishnah is going to have a lenient view, it'll work with nobody. Let's take it on the road. Toshima, I'll bring you a proof. Shtei kiros hamat imois. If you have two stoves that are next to each other with a common wall in the middle, a clay divider. Achas grufa ktuma, A was cleaned out of coals, v'achashena grufa ve'ena ktuma, and B is full of coals. Mashin al gabi grufa ktuma, ve'en mashin al shena grufa ve'ena ktuma. You can do shia on A, but you can't do shia on B. Umahin mashin, and what can you do shia on A? Beishamai armin v'loi klum. Beishamai says nada. So even on A, which is perfectly grufa, Beishamai says you can't keep anything on it. And Beis Hillel says, that on A, you can put hot water but not a tafshil. And Okar, if you took food off A, Divra Koy lo yachzer. Everyone agrees you can't put anything back, Divra Reb Meir. So Reb Meir is ballistically machmir. He says that on A, Beis Shammai says you can't put anything on and you can't put anything back. And Beis Hillel says that on A, you can put on hot water but not a cooked food. And to put back, forget about it. So that's very, very strict. Rabbi Yehuda is more moderate, still strict, but moderate. Beis Shammai says that chamen avalei tafshil, to leave food on A, you can leave hot water, but not food. Beis Hillel that on A, you can put chamen v'tafshil, both hot water and food. Now, Beis Shammai noitel avalei machzir. Beis Shammai says you can't put back, or Beis Hillel raf machzir. Beis Hillel says you can put back. This sounds familiar. That again for Shia, you have to do grief and ktima. Beis Shammai still only allows hot water, but not tafshil. Beis Hillel allows both. Beis Shammai, even with grief and ktima, doesn't allow chazar, and Beis Hillel does. So the Gemara says, Iamrit, if you say bishlom, it would be well understood, lashais tanan, that our Mishnah has the strict view. Our Mishnah has the strict view. For Shia, you have to do grief and ktima. The masnis and mani, who does our Mishnah line up with? Our Mishnah's strict view lines up with Rabbi Yehuda, who has a moderate view, but it matches our Mishnah. And one more time, for Shia you have to do grief and ktima. Beis Shammai says it still only helps for water, not for tafshil. Beis Hillel says it works for both. Beis Shammai does not allow chazara, and Beis Hillel allows chazara. If our Mishnah is going to have the lenient view, that the issues in the Mishnah is regarding chazara, but for Shia we hold like Chananya, you don't even need grief and ktima, masnis and mani. Who does our Mishnah line up with according to the two opinions in the Braisa? Lo Reb Yehuda, lo Reb Meir. Doesn't line up with Reb Yehuda nor Reb Meir. Reb Meir, according to Reb Meir, he's so strict that kasher leBeis Shammai b'chado. The difficulty would be that in our Mishnah, Beis Shammai allowed shehiyah on chamen, and here Beis Shammai allows shehiyah nothing. So that's one kasha. Regarding chazara, it's okay. I mean, Beis Shammai aseret chazara, and here Beis Shammai aseret chazara. But Beis Shammai has a problem with shia. Our Mishnah, Beis Shammai allowed shia b'grif v'ktim on chamen, and here he allows nothing. El Beis Hillel b'tarti. And according to Reb Meir and Beis Hillel, we have two problems, because according to our Mishnah, if our Mishnah has the lenient view, then b'shia you can even have put on a stove B. You can even have put on stove B the one that's Eina Grufa, Eina Ketuma. And Beis Hillel, and according to Reb Meir in the Braisa, Beis Hillel only allows you to put on A, the one that's Grufa and Ketuma. The other issue is regarding Chazara. According to Beis Hillel, in our Mishnah, you can do Chazara. You can do Chazara be Grufa Ktuma, Bein Chamen and Bein Tafshil. But according to Reb Meir, you can't do Chazara either. According to Beis Hillel, in our Mishnah, Beis Hillel allowed Chazara, and according to Reb Meir, Beis Hillel doesn't allow Chazara. And Rabbi Yehuda, And according to Rabbi Yehuda, kasha gruf and ketuma. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the problem is gruf and ketuma, because Rabbi Yehuda allowed, our mission allowed Shia without grif and ketuma, like Hananya. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, we only allow it on Kira A, that is gruf and ketuma. So it's making it simple. If our Mishnah is strict, it matches Rabbi Yehuda's strict view, but if our Mishnah is lenient, it certainly doesn't match Rabbi Meir's very strict view, nor even Rabbi Yehuda's partially strict view. Because if our Mishnah is lenient, it allows you to do Shia even without grief and ktima. I could say to you, maybe our Mishnah is being lenient. And our Mishnah agrees with Rabbi Yehuda on one point and argues on another point. He agrees with our Mishnah that the machlokes Beishamai and Beis Hillel is bein bechamin and bein betavshil, and noidlin and machzirin. Beishamai allows only chamin, and Beis Hillel allows chamin and tavshil. Beishamai does not allow it to be machzir, Beis Hillel does allow it to be machzir. But there's one obvious difference between our Mishnah and Rabbi Yehuda. Dilutana didan savar lashais. The Tan of our Mishnah says even she is mutter af pishen agor ve'nakatum, and Rabbi Yehuda holds lashais nami. It has to be on kira A, which is gar ve'katum in, and viloy loy, and not on B. So we haven't really resolved what our Mishnah is talking about. Is our Mishnah matir Shia, or our Mishnah prohibits Shia? Now it's interesting, la halacha, there's the remote. The Ramah writes, the minig is to rely on a lenient view, and you can leave food cooking on a fire without a blech. The blech is what accomplishes grief and ktima. You've covered the fire, as long as it's cooked k'machal ben dersoy before Shabbos. The Shabura says that even though the Ramah rules leniently, you should be machmer aliba derabanan and not leave partially cooked food on the stove erev Shabbos, unless you have a blech. And the blech constitutes grief and ktima. And the blech is not only for chazorah, the blech is even for shia. The Gris Moshe has an issue. What about our stoves? Our stoves, there's no coals, so there's nothing to stoke. Should we be concerned about somebody might raise the flame? So Moshe says, logically, I wouldn't be worried about raising the flame, because if you're worried about raising the flame, then even in the case of the Mishnah where you heated the stove using stubble and straw, so maybe you'll bring more straw. So we're not chayish that you'll add more fuel. So here also we shouldn't be chayish, you might turn the gas up. And in the end, he says not to be mekel, and you should do grief and ktima. And again, according to Mishnah Berurah, you should do grief and ktima even if your food is cooked k'machal ben drasoi for shia. Can you put a pot of food on the outside of a kira? Do we say toicha valgaba aser? Maybe inside the kira and on top is aser, unless you do grief and ktima. Avalismach, but on the outside is shaper dam is okay. Or maybe even on the outside we're worried about shema yachata. You might stir the coals. Toshima, bring your proof. Shtei kiras hamat imois. If you have two side-by-side stoves, achas gruf and ketuma v'achas sheni gruf and ketuma. A was clean of its coals and B was full of coals. Mashin al gabi gruf and ketuma, so you're allowed to keep food on A. Avagav the kasalik lahavla meidach, even though it's getting heat from B. So you see, I don't mind as long as the heat is coming from this side. The Moran says no. Dilma, perhaps shani hasan. There it's different. The kiven the midalya shalad ba'avira. There, it doesn't pay to stir the coals in B in order to make the pot on A burn better, because there's too much air between the coals of B and the pot that's sitting on top of A, so you're not going to stir the coals. On the other hand, if it's right on the side of the wall of the outside of the wall of the kira, there I might be concerned that you might stir the coals. Toshima, try to bring you one more proof. Domar of Safra, Amar of Chia, Ktama, if you cover the coals with a cool ash, and Vinislapsa, it became inflamed again, so it's okay. Therefore, Saimchan law, you're allowed to put a pot of food on the outside. I'm not concerned. The Mekaiman allow, you're allowed to do Shia. Benoit limimenu, Machziran law, you're allowed to take food off and put food back. So Shmamino, but you see that Lismach, even to put a pot on the outside, Nami, only Ktama in, like Ktama loy. The reason that you were allowed to put food on the outside of the stove was only because you had covered the coals with ash. The Gemara says, according to your reasoning, let me ask you a question. Noit limimenu the Ktani, when you said you're allowed to take food from it, Ktama in like Ktama loy, you're only allowed to take food from it only if the coals have been covered, and if the coals haven't been covered, you're not allowed to take food from it. So why did it bother tell you noitlin? Elatana noitlin mishemachzir. It talked about taking the food off because you really wanted to talk about putting it back on. So Achanami here also maybe tana saimcha mishemekaimen. In order to keep food on top, you have to have a grief and ktima. But on the side, maybe you don't have to have grief and ktima. But the reason why he said Saimchen also should have grief and ktima because he was talking about Mekaimen, so he also said the same halacha for Saimchen. The same way that because of Machzir, and he says Noitlin, so because of Mekaimen, he says Saimchen. There's no comparison. Hasam Noitlin Machzir Bechad Mokamhu. There, when you put food back, it's because you took it off. So of course you have to mention you took it off and you want to put it back. But so Tana Noitlin Misham Machzir. And so he talked about taking it off and then putting it back. Saimchen is on the side of the stove, and Mekaimen b'chad mokamu, and keeping it is on top of the stove. So one has nothing to do with the other. So if for Saimchen you didn't have to have grief and ktima, you should have said, in order to be Mekaimen you need grief and ktima, but in order to be Saimchen you don't need grief and ktima. So my havi Allah, what's the bottom line? Tashema, I'll prove it to you. Kira shesiku begefes veitzim. If you have a kira that you heated with pulp and wood, you're allowed to put it on the side, even though it's not gruf and ktuma, but you can't put anything on top. Elam can gruf and ktuma. So you see that to put on top, you need grif and ktima. Again, according to the Rabbanan, if it's not cooked completely, and according to Chananya, if it's not cooked, kemachal ben drasoi, but on the side, you don't need grif and ktima. If coals are dying, or you cover it with some thin layer of flax, that's also called ktuma. But you see that putting it on the side is much more lenient, and therefore even without grief and ktima, I'm not afraid shami yachata b'gecholim. Kol tuv, and we'll continue Mitzvah tomorrow, and I have to figure out a way how to stabilize this. Okay, sorry for shaking around a lot.